Okay, hello there everybody. Thank you for viewing this video today. This is being video recorded in advance. And if the hurricanes are still going on as they are today, and the earthquakes in Mexico and all the other crazy disasters in the world, I hope everybody's okay. So I am here today. I am a teacher with World's English, and I'm here today to talk about the IELTS, and specifically the academic portion of, the academic version of the writing section of the exam. Okay, so part one, actually, I'm not sure of the order. I don't recall the order. I have to look at that. I think the listening section is actually the first part of the exam. And we are going to do a quick rundown on what parts there are in the exam and the time frames and kind of an idea of what you can expect on the total exam. But then we're going to talk specifically about the writing section and focus on the academic portion of that. So if you have any questions when we get to the end, just reach out to me or to one of the other teachers on worldsenglish.net, and we'd be happy to get back with you. There are a number of lessons in the writing preparation courses, the writing preparation course at World's English. What you need to take out of those will depend on your gap analysis, which you will learn about by taking a level test. The level test from World's English is free, and the gap analysis will tell us where your weaknesses and your strengths are and which lessons you need. It will help us develop a lesson plan for you to get you to where you need to be to score what you want to score on the IELTS as quickly as possible. That said, everybody's different. It's highly recommended that you be at least an upper intermediate level before you attempt the IELTS or the TOEFL exam. So that would be a B2 level. If you're not there yet, then it's and again, you can find out by taking a level test. So you can request that from us for free. If you're not there yet, then it's we will have the information we need to get you there as quickly as possible, so you can start taking preparation courses for the IELTS. We offer 4 courses: reading, writing, listening, and speaking, with numerous lessons in each. What you can expect on the exam, first, the listening section is 30 minutes. You'll listen to various monologues and conversations, and then answer questions about that. The reading section varies depending on whether you're taking the academic or the general version. In the academic version of the exam, you'll read 3 long passages with tasks. Texts range from the descriptive and factual to the discursive and analytical. It includes nonverbal materials such as diagrams, graphs, or illustrations. So you're going to have to describe those graphs and be able to explain, or diagrams, and be able to explain what they mean and what they're telling us. You know, it's really important that you learn to analyze a graph in addition to the English skills that you need to analyze that graph, because there's a lot of native English speakers that don't know how to analyze a graph. So, you know, there's two parts to that skill. So first you need to be able to read a graph or a chart before you can talk about it in English or even in your own language. Okay, so they are authentic texts. The writing section is also dependent on two different tests, dependent on whether you're taking the academic or the general version. For the academic version, you'll write at least 150 words, and it's the same as the reading, in the sense that you're going to be analyzing graphs, charts, diagrams, and then you're going to write a short essay on that of at least 250 words. So it's a pretty good essay. So again, you'll need that skill to analyze graphs. The speaking section is only 11 to 14 minutes. It's actually the shortest part of the exam. On the IELTS, you will have a face-to-face interview with a live examiner versus the TOEFL, where you speak into you're recorded into a computer. You'll actually be speaking with a live examiner. And the first part of that is just a face-to-face interview where they're just going to ask you some personal questions and things that will be easy for you to respond to, most likely. And they'll be familiar topics. That's kind of what you can expect, but we'll get into that in a little more detail here. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so here's an example of a graph, a bar graph, and they're asking you to make a sentence stating how the number of boys reading horror books compares to the number of girls that enjoy that category. So you'll need to be able to first understand the question, understand what the results are for. In this case, it's for the number of responses, and then the breakdown. So you need to read your key. You have, this is the males and this is the females. Okay, so you will make a sentence stating how the number of boys reading horror books compares. So you would say something like, there are about 27, 28 males who prefer to read horror books compared to more than 40, or approximately 42 females in Stoke-on-Trent, England, who prefer reading horror stories, horror books. So there's definitely more females than males that prefer that category of books, based on the number of responses. The total number of responses given. So, okay, so obviously I didn't write down any notes or really think about that a lot. So your response will actually need to be better than the one I just gave you. So that's why we practice this. Okay, let's go ahead and move forward. Okay, so here's another example. Preferred book genres, this word is genres, of boys and girls in Stoke-on-Trent, England. Okay, so we're going to make full sentences describing the data. So here we have a bar graph that demonstrates the differences between males and females in Stoke-on-Trent, England, with regards to their preferred book genres. Some like science fiction and fantasy, and some like romance. We're actually looking at the number of responses for both categories. science fiction and fantasy and romance. And we can see here that it looks like the orange males showed no response for romance. So it looks like none of the males enjoy romance, where it looks like about 12 females did select that they enjoy romance. And then for science fiction and fantasy, this was the most popular with the boys, so they chose about 29, 28 chose science fiction and fantasy. And it looks like for girls, there actually were 52 to 54, about 54 females preferred science fiction and fantasy. So overall, it looks like there were many more responses from the girls than there were from the boys. About half as many males responded as females to the survey, and more females preferred both categories. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move forward. So again, your response will need to be more detailed and better, but you'll get very good at reading these graphs. Okay, the language of data comparisons. Twice as many boys as girls read horror books. Okay, you might have heard me say half as many boys as girls responded. Okay, this is terminology you'll have to learn. Twice as many, half as many, double. Okay, roughly equal number of boys, 28, and girls, 26, read science fiction and fantasy books, whereas no boys in this sample read books in romance category, whereas is a comparison word. You might say however, or in contrast, in comparison. Lots of different things you can say. So these are the kinds of terms you will learn as you practice with the graphs and charts. And they're the type of language we use when describing data or data. It's data or data depending on which version of English you're speaking. Okay, use each of these words to describe the information in the chart. Okay, so we have the same, while, type, significant, and smaller. So we could say the same number of boys liked horror as science fiction and fantasy, while more girls like science fiction than boys. I'm sorry, more girls like science fiction than horror. Girls liked two different types of reading or genres. Or no, they liked several types. So they liked all types. They liked horror, science fiction and fantasy, romance, historical fiction, action, detective, and mystery. Whereas boys only liked 5 of the categories. So what is significant here is that more girls seem to have responded to the survey in all categories than boys. In fact, it would appear nearly twice as many girls responded as boys, or a smaller number of boys responded than girls. Boys like science fiction and horror the most. They like a smaller number of boys prefer historical fiction. Okay, so that's some examples of how we would use those. Okay, so you might have heard me use some of these. I think I used whereas fewer, we could say fewer boys prefer historical fiction than science fiction, or a smaller number of, or less boys prefer. Okay, there are 6 categories. Okay, so each of these is a category. In comparison, okay, we could say boys in comparison to girls seem to, the boys and girls seem to answer comparatively in science fiction and fantasy, but that's not actually true. Girls, about twice as many girls prefer science fiction and fantasy as boys. We could say boys and girls answer comparatively in romance and action because we see about 10, about 12 in each. 12 for the girls in romance and 12 for the boys in action. There may be a slight difference. Rather than 12, this may be 14. Okay. Use each of these words to describe the information in the chart. Okay, again, we have with regards to, half as many, sort, and considerable. So with regards to science fiction and fantasy and horror, about half as many boys like science fiction and fantasy as girls. However, we can see that twice as many girls approximately answered the survey. So there is a considerable difference in the number of responses received from females versus males. Sort. Let's see, I'm not sure how we would use sort here. If we were to sort this by, if we were to sort this by the number of females preferring a specific category, we would have science fiction and fantasy first, followed by horror, then detective and mystery, and then equally for action and historical fiction, and lastly, romance. Okay. All right, so it's important that we understand these relationship words thoroughly. This is the most important vocabulary for you to learn if you do not already know this before preparing for the IELTS. Words like whereas, while, although, in comparison with, different from, relatively, relative to, with regards to, in terms of, respectively, and gap. What's gap? A gap would be a difference, or yeah, I think a difference, or a lacking. Okay, quantity words we might use are the same, the majority, a minority, equal, half as many, much, twice as many, or much. Make sure you understand the difference in many and much and when to use each. Double, triple, greater, more, less, fewer, larger, smaller, higher, lower, roughly, around, most. And so if you don't understand what any of these words mean, and you're not able to figure that out on your own, or you're not sure when to use many or much, this is the kind of things you want to discuss with your teacher. These are the things that we can help you with. Okay. So some other words and phrases to use in part 1 would be categorizing words like quantity, number, amount. Same, so these are synonyms, right? Category, sample, type, figure, sort, variety, trend. Intensity words would be significant, substantial, considerable, sizable, slight, modest, negligible, and popular. So very little. And it's okay if you use, you don't have to use you don't have to use vocabulary like negligible. You could say barely there, hardly even there. It's okay to say things like that. Okay. Reporting phrases you could use. The chart shows that. It can be seen that, according to the data as reported in this research. Okay, this is typically how you're going to start your description. This chart shows that. This chart shows a comparison between boys and girls. First, you want to describe the chart, okay? And then you'll get into your details. And we'll practice a lot with that. Okay, we're going to practice a lot with that because it could show up in both the writing and the reading section. So you really need to understand how to read charts, graphs, and describe them. All right. So let's just look at the missing words here. Canada is a very large country in blank with Belgium. Okay, so in comparison with, right? We'll go ahead and mark these. All right. Although more and more Chinese people are learning foreign languages, only a blank number of them speak Norwegian. Okay, what else could we say? We could say only a small number of them speak Norwegian. Only a minor number, a little number. All right, and then we have, in most countries, there are roughly the blank number of men and women. Okay, so I think the answer there is same. So we could say in most countries there are roughly an identical number or an equivalent number or a similar number of men and women. So, you know, not only should you learn these type of words, but you should also know some synonyms so you can change it up a little bit when you're describing. And practice them enough so that, you know, it comes to you somewhat automatically or spontaneously. Okay, students who study 1 day a week make a blank number of mistakes on exams relative to those who study at least 3 days a week. Okay, 1 day a week versus 3 days a week of study, they're going to make a higher or greater or larger number of mistakes on exams. It can be blank that the use of computers increased dramatically over the period 1990 to 2000. It can be seen, it can be understood, it can be deducted, it can be known. So I think if you know 2 or 3 synonyms for a way to describe a difference like that, you'll be okay, even just 2. Okay, let's move forward. And here we have just some more of the same. This is just 6 through 10. So let's try these. The chart shows that 112 men and 110 men in the study had a driver's license. This difference is what? I can't hear you out there, but hopefully you're saying negligible, minor, minute, tiny. Okay. There is a large blank between the sales figures for 1990 and those for 2000, which are considerably higher. Okay, so There's a large gap. There's a large difference. There's a large number of, there's a large quantity. Now, I think gap and difference are your main words. You might think of another synonym. That's the best ones I can think of there. Okay, this study indicates that romance books are much more blank among girls than among boys. Popular, what else? Preferred, appreciated. Okay. The number of people with a smartphone in Pakistan, blank, from 3 million to 6 million between 2008 and 2012. I think that pretty much happened everywhere, but Pakistan is our example. The number of people with a smartphone increased from 3 million to 6 million. Doubled is good because the numbers are double. Grew. We could say increased or grew if we couldn't use double. You know, maybe it grew from 4 million to 6 million. Okay. To the data, blank to the data, average temperatures in July are slightly lower in August, according to the data. What we see in the data is that according to, pursuant to, as shown here by the data. So it's not always one word, it might be a phrase that you use. Okay, all right, describe the data in the chart. And see how many sentences you can make. So this is here for you to practice with. You should try to use the relationship words, categorizing words, intensity words, quantity words, and reporting phrases. If you're enrolled in this lesson, you should be receiving, I'm sorry, if you enroll in the future IELTS writing lessons, you'll be receiving this slide, I believe. When you take lessons with World's English, you have a learning portal where you receive the slides from each lesson, and you also will receive homework, which while it's not mandatory, it's very, very important for you to do. It's very helpful, and you know, if you complete it, your teacher will grade it and give you feedback. So it's highly recommended that you do so. So if you take further lessons, you will receive these slides to practice with and review. Okay. In academic and formal English, respectively is used to indicate the order in which information is given. Okay. Jane and Sam got on the bus, respectively. That's not the best word for that, but you get the idea. We understand that Jane got on first. Okay, so here's a better example in the lesson. Car ownership is much more common in the United States than in Spain. The exact numbers, okay, so actually it actually does work better with numbers than the example that I gave. The exact numbers are 0.809 and 0.593 vehicles per capita, respectively. So by saying respectively, we understand that they are in the order given. So car ownership is much more common in the United States. Since the United States was first, the first number is 0.809. Spain, 0.593. Okay, that's what respectively is telling us. Also, it's good to learn the right way to read the numbers. We can say 0.809. We can say 0.809. We can say 809 thousandths, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Okay. Just this number here, to highlight it. Whoops, that didn't work. Okay, it wants to highlight the whole thing, but if we just had 0.8 like that, we could read it as 8 tenths. 0.80, we could read it as 81 hundredths. Okay. So practice reading numbers with your teacher and make sure that you are reading the numbers correctly, especially when it comes to decimals and fractions and things like that. All right. How many cars are there per person in the United States? Okay, so we answered that question. There were 0.89. And in Spain, we said 0.593. Okay, what does per capita mean? Per capita. Okay, that means per person. Based on the number of people. Okay. All right, so which of these are important in part one? Looking very closely at the chart or table, do you think that's important? Of course it is, absolutely. Okay, how are you going to analyze it if you don't look closely at it? Giving your own opinion about the reasons behind the data or the data. Do you think we need to give our opinion? No, we're reading statistics, science. So opinion does not count. We need to state the facts. Facts only. Thinking hard about the numbers and looking for patterns in them. Yes, this is very important. This is how you analyze. Using a variety of words to express the data. That's what we've been talking about. We've been talking about all the different words you can use and the similes, how important that vocabulary is for you. And making comparisons. You know, so you need to describe what you see. You need to describe how they compare. Do you need to be accurate? Of course, this is science. This is scientific data. This is not loose. This is very, very strict. To an extent, okay, you'll notice on some of the graphs, you know, it's a range. Let's go back to one. Oh, they're way back there. Okay. So, you know, there's 1, 2, 3, there's 5 lines here for the first 10 responses. So, you know, you're going to have to count each of these as 2. So you could say approximately 2. It might be 1, but since there's only 1 line there, you know, they don't seem to be using the half lines. But, you know, try to say 2. Try to count what you have there and say it accurately. Like, for example, here you'd say 28 instead of 27 or 29. Okay, be as accurate as you can. Okay, let me get back to where we were. Okay. Should you add information that's not in the data? No. Okay. Just talk about what you see. Don't give your opinion and don't add in information. Okay, just state the facts. Okay, so that's the most important part of the writing exam, the writing section of the IELTS. Let's see, what else can I tell you about it? The reading and writing components are about the same length in both versions, should you decide to take both versions. The differences between the writing and reading are just in context, mostly. Contextual parameters. The scores are not interchangeable, okay? They're scored differently. So don't think that if your friend got a certain score on the general version and you get a higher score on the academic version, that doesn't mean that you understand that part of English better than your friend, because they're scored entirely different. So compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. Okay, what else? If you are able to score an 8 or 7 band, that's typically what you're looking for in the academic version. If you are trying to be admitted to an English-speaking university, but it is important to check with the university that you're interested in. If you can get a 7, you have a good command of the language. You'll have occasional inaccuracies, so it's not perfect. You might use some inappropriate language sometimes. As far as listening, you should be able to understand the speed that I'm speaking. If you're struggling with understanding this natural level of speech, then you may need to go back and do some listening general English work so you can get better with your listening skills. If you score in the 8, if you scored C1 on your level test, you have a good chance of scoring an 8 band on the IELTS. Not a guarantee, but a good chance, as long as you've done well on all parts. That means you have a fully operational command of the English language. You might have the occasional misunderstanding. That happens even with native speakers. So, but you should be able to handle a complex conversation and arguments and things like that. So if you score 8, you're well prepared for English academia, and probably so with a 7 as well. Below that, it's going to be up to the university that you intend to enroll in, but if they feel that you can succeed with a 6, then they should know what they need at their institution. Okay, so if you have any questions, again, please reach out to us on the messaging board or by email, support@worldsenglish.net, or you can just go to World's English Net and send a message to us there. That's the best, easiest, quickest way to reach us. And I hope that you will keep your eye out for future lessons in the preparation lessons in the writing section of the IELTS. There are several lessons. The lessons are only $5 a piece. You can purchase a subscription and get as many lessons as you want in a month for only $29. So if you're going to take more than 5 or 6 lessons, then that'll be the better value for you. So I hope that you are ready to dig in, work hard, and that we can help you prepare and succeed in reaching the score that you'd like on the exam. And thank you again for watching today. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like us, share us, and come on over to the website and enroll in your next lesson. Take care.